right. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and start on module 2. This is all about budgeting and ways to think through some budgeting. Again, I do think that this will not be anything earth-shattering for y'all because y'all are incredibly smart human beings. But I do think that it'll be maybe a way to think about it in a way you hadn't thought about before, and also a way to provide it to survivors in a way that feels accessible. Again, you probably are doing great stuff, and so this is just an additional tool potentially for you to use with survivors that you were coming across. So we'll probably about another hour and 15 minutes, and then we'll be done for the day. So if you can hang in there, that'd be fantastic. Please feel free. We're a small enough group that you can unmute if you want. If you want to hear your voice, I'd love to hear your voice. If you have questions or comments, or raise a hand and I'll call on you, or utilize the chat. But a way to feel a little connected with one another would be fantastic. I don't put anybody on the spot, but feel free to use that if you want to. So we're going to talk about money management, which sounds super exciting, right? But we're going to try to make it exciting. So I want you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with your own personal finances? You yourself, how comfortable are you on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being, I actually feel uncomfortable talking about budgeting. I don't like the word. And 10 being, I got this. I budget to the penny. I actually thoroughly enjoy it. Where are you? If you would put in the chat where you see yourself on your personal finances, where do you see yourself? We have 8.5. Anybody else? 8.5, 9. Oh, yeah, gotcha. 9 post-divorce, 3 pre. That's very telling. 6, 8, 8, 7s. Great. Perfect. Anybody else? Scale of 1 to 10. All right. Here's something I would tell you, that, how many of you budget regularly? I'd like to see if you budget regularly. Yes, no. Like, write it down. I do. Yes, yes, yes. Fantastic. Thumbs up from Selena. Great. Yep. Okay. And for those who don't, if you are comfortable, I know you're feeling put a little bit on the spot, then maybe Jessica will offer some insight here. If you don't, why don't you? It sounds like you're paying your bills on time, and then the rest of it, you kind of not worrying about where that goes or writing it down. It kind of maybe do it in your head. So why don't you do a more traditional budget? What keeps you from doing that? And there's no wrong answer. If you say what I do is working, all right, you got it. So why not traditionally budget? Laziness, exhaustion, that's real too. That's good too. I get it. I get it. Absolutely. But that's actually really good. I'm glad you actually came forward with that, Jessica, because I think that also it's important to remember when we're working with survivors who are resistant to it, doing it too, right? That you're not doing it, right? So that's real. If ever there was a more exhausting time than the time you're coming into shelter, then you can imagine why folks are not wanting to participate and do that piece. But for those of you who do budget, what do you get out of it? What is the payoff to doing a more traditional budget? Writing down all your expenses, writing down all your income, keeping track of that. What do you get out of that process personally? Oops, I advanced too fast. What do you get out of that personally? Security? You feel a sense of freedom? Yeah. The joy of seeing the results? Fantastic. Great. So that's something I want you to keep in mind. I want you to keep in mind that for those of us, many of us who do budget, I have not always budgeted my entire life. I can tell you that not budgeting created more anxiety than budgeting. That once I started actually budgeting and tracking where my money was going, I felt less anxiety. It didn't mean I made more money. I didn't increase my income, but I was more decisive about where it was going, and I was clear about where I was losing money at the same time. So it's important that it is critical that if you, after today and after the next 2 days, are not budgeting and continue to not budget, that is fine. That is the choice you have made. And I won't bug you about it. But what I will tell you is that if you're not doing it yourself personally, you may not do it with anybody else. It is not fair. It's an absolute setup. If you yourself don't see the value of budgeting, then you may not ask it of others. Additionally, if you're not doing it yourself, then you also are not going to be good at identifying pitfalls and how to make them really effective for survivors. So it is critical that if you have it in your job description and you expect to be doing this with survivors, then you yourself must be doing it for yourself personally. required. So feel free to tell your boss that Kim said you don't have to do this because you don't do it yourself. Or my preference actually is that you actually will start budgeting for yourself after today. And again, what we'll talk about is that budgeting can look different for everybody. I personally, I love a spreadsheet. Never met a spreadsheet I didn't like. Other folks use online apps. Some folks will use, I love that, Jessica, thank you. Challenge accepted, she says. But it can be on paper, it can be on scratch paper, it can be on back of a cocktail napkin, but that you start paying attention about where your money is going and that you're making decisions about it, and that it's not just sort of flying out of your wallet, your account without you having some understanding of where it's going, and making real decisions about that is the goal of that. So when we talk about what this is financial management, right? It is important to recognize that when we're doing this work and we're talking about money and finances, that most people have limited amount of money to buy what they want or need. Most people are having to make spending decisions. Thanks, Galen said, okay, I'll start. But we must make careful decisions about how and we use the money available. One of the things, I think most of us are probably in this work because we care about human beings and we care about the community in which we live. And we have made a decision that this work is important to us because we care about humans, right? But when we are really paying attention to how and where we're spending our money, we then really get to put our money behind people and things we care about. If I want to make sure I'm supporting women-owned companies, or I'm investing in stocks that don't support certain labor practices. If I want to only do green work and only support those kinds of things, I have money to put behind that, and I can be very deliberative about supporting those things and people that I care about. So that's one of the things to think about. I think that often because we do the work we do, we've sort of resigned ourselves to say, I'm a social worker, I'm an advocate, and I don't care about money, obviously, because I'm not paid well, right? So money is not important to me, but the reality is that money is power, and that when we are able to use the limited resources we have behind and supporting people and things that we care about, it does make a difference. So I just want to point that out. So some of these you can do is to just really encourage you to start becoming informed. Talk to family and friends. You probably have people in your life that seem to kind of have some things about money figured out. Don't be afraid to pick their brains. Ask coworkers, ask family members, people that you trust for their advice. In my experience, most people that are comfortable talking about money and finances are happy to share what they've learned along the way, right? And so I think that we do it in really informal ways, particularly as women. I think we're like, oh, I got this on clearance at Target, or I got buy one, get one free on there, buy one, get one half on shoes. So we're sharing those financial gems in really informal ways, but now it's time that we share those in more formal ways. So we talk about, hey, tell me more about where you're investing and what sort of, are you in a Roth or traditional IRA? And having those kinds of conversations that really make our money go further. Encourage you to consult a professional. And we'll talk more in the last module about how those folks are paid and the difference between a fiduciary and just a financial planner, and what those differences are, and some things that you can ask when securing that. Access trusted websites for easy to understand information. There's great resources out there. There's NerdWallet, there's money.com. There's great resources out there to type in. If you don't know, if you're like, I need to decide if I need to get term or whole insurance, Google it. Research it from a company that doesn't sell it, and research it from a company that does. Research it from all the different kinds of angles, and listen to all different types of voices. Find voices that look like you. Find voices that live similar. Like, that if you are a woman of color, then find women of color advisors. They're out there. So really invest in those areas, and look for free community financial workshops and seminars. Banks will often offer them, but as well, libraries will sometimes offer them, or community centers will offer financial planning workshops. And then I also want to just encourage you, sometimes I think what keeps us from really taking a hold of our financial future is that it's never enough. So what's the point? I'm never going to make a lot of money. I dedicated my life to the service of others, and I know what that means. It means I probably, there's always going to be a little bit of a struggle financially for me. And so what I want you to do is I want you to run through what's the worst case scenario. For me, it is that I lose my job tomorrow. My boss comes on and says, we've had enough of your crap, Kim, we're getting rid of you. And I lose my job tomorrow. So I probably will have to sell my house. I probably will have to, and I've got a kiddo in college, and I got a teenager here still at home. Probably have to sell my house. I might have to move in with my mom temporarily. I probably have to get rid of a vehicle. Now, that would be incredibly motivating, moving in with my mother. It would be probably incredibly motivating for all of us. But it's a plan. I'm not going to be homeless. It's not going to be ideal, and I'm not going to enjoy any part of it, but I'm not going to be destitute. And then I'll climb my way back. I will come back from that event. So now I know if the worst happens, I got it. Again, not ideal, but I know what the plan is. And now I'm not living in that space. And now I can actually create a plan based on where I'm at today and take steps moving forward. And that's the thing, is that once you start creating that plan, start taking steps, small obtainable goals, and working towards them. You don't have to do everything today. Set one financial goal at the beginning of every month. I'm going to cancel this credit card. I'm going to roll over my 401k from my old job this month. And when I do that, then I'm going to figure out another step I need to take next month towards my financial future. But set one small attainable goal and work towards that. Or identify that and recognize there will be setbacks along the way. There'll be hard times. There'll be unexpected things. Don't let them derail your attempts to secure financial assets and your financial freedom. So when we talk about budgeting and finances, it's important that before you sit down and really create a budget, that you identify the difference between needs versus wants. And so I think we all know those needs are the things you have to survive, such as food and shelter. And wants are the non-essential things that they're nice to have that make life more enjoyable and maybe even easier. So, I have to have water. I don't necessarily, but I would really want to have a sparkling water with a hint of lime. Right? That's my fave. That's my go-to. That's my happy place, is sparkling water with a hint of lime. But if I can't afford it, then I'm going to pull out the tap and we're going to just do that. And that's fine. That it's identifying that. What's important for you to recognize as advocates and for humans in general is that needs or wants are different for everybody. What's a need for me may be a want for somebody else, and vice versa. It may depend on my individual circumstances. It may depend on my values. It may depend on my faith or whatever that is, but they are different for everybody. And it is critical as advocates that we don't ever make somebody feel bad for a decision they've made around a need versus wants, but simply talk through what that looks like. I personally am not a smoker. I used to be. So I recognize how hard that is to give those up. But for some survivors, they are a need. And that but at some point, maybe they want to shift them into the want category, and making sure that we're just really doing a tremendous amount of caretaking around people and allowing them to have that space in those conversations. So I do want to just identify too, before we get into really creating that budget, that the part of, for some folks, budget is going to be public benefits. So exploring all the public benefits that may be available to them through things like TANF, which is temporary assistance to needy families. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier, that if they are receiving public benefits, they may be eligible to get FCO, which waives them out of certain work requirements associated with TANF. States that have FCO, and New Mexico is one of them, actually all the states have some form of FCO. It actually requires those TANF office are screening all applicants for domestic violence or abuse, that requires that they maintain their confidentiality, that they offer them referrals and information, and they can provide waivers for programs, program requirements such as time limits, residency requires, child support, cooperation, and family cap. Make sure they explore all those options. My son is home. It's a school day, and he's upstairs starting eating for the first time today. And I think I smell a whiff of bacon, which he's not supposed to be eating. So I'm going to text him really quickly saying no bacon. So we'll see how that goes over. Explore all the pros and cons to disclosure as well to your TANF office. So something to keep in mind about the public assistance, that it may include cash assistance, child support, food stamps, free and reduced school lunch. These are all the kinds of different public assistance somebody may be eligible for. Recognizing all the things they may be eligible for is helpful when putting the budget together, because what may currently be an expense may be able to be picked up in some sort of public assistance program, as well as they may be missing out on some potential income. So that's important to have these conversations. But whenever they go to apply for public assistance, they do need to be prepared to provide requirements, documentation such as social security number, proof of identity, number in household, as well as meeting other eligibility requirements potentially. Show their income and assets. If they're homeless or in shelter, they may ask for priority processing as well. And they may be asked to meet regularly with a caseworker. So some things to keep in mind. Okay, so now let's get to the budgeting, the really, really fun stuff. So it's important to recognize that budgeting is just a tool to help you make these critical spending decisions, and that it can be useful to help keep your spending on track and uncover unnecessary expenses. Additionally, it can also help you set goals for both short and long-term things you may be working towards. But don't get anxiety. Don't let debt keep you from moving forward when it comes to budgeting. Don't say, but I got 40,000 in student loan debts, or whatever. I've got this old bankruptcy I'm still dealing with. Don't let that keep you from taking control and at least incorporating those things that make you nervous into it. I also want to point out that budgeting has become a dirty word for a lot of people. Just as diet often can feel like a dirty word for people. No one wants to talk about a diet or going on a diet, but in reality, the term diet literally means what you are consuming, right? That's all that means. But it has come to mean restrictions. It's come to mean things you can't have. It's come to mean sadness and deprivation, right? But in reality, it really just means, what am I consuming? Not pro or con, good or bad, but literally, what am I taking in? Budgeting has become the same thing in a lot of ways. Budgeting is, literally means what's your income, what's coming in, and what's going out. But it's become to mean limiting or restrictive, and so becomes a bit of a dirty word. So one of the things you could do is even just reframe it. Think of it as a spending plan. Everybody likes to spend, even if spending is on, utilities, but spending's fun, but it also makes you feel a little more in control of that potentially, even if you just reframe what you call it. And again, when you're putting this together, one of the things to think about is that just remember that, because I think debt can be so overwhelming for folks, and it feels like a hill you're never going to climb, that it is common, and it's uniquely common to the United States, more so than even in many other countries. It is common. So don't let a large debt keep you from taking control of your finances. So here's the really complicated scientific secret to creating a budget, right? You identify all of your income, whether that's traditional from work, or TANF benefits, or child support, or side gigs, and all of that stuff. You identify all your income, you identify your monthly expenses. These are the rents, utilities, fixed versus and flexible expenses. And then you subtract, right? That's the complicated part, that you hopefully will have money left over, and minimally at least come out to a zero. If you created a good budget too, all of those little tiny expenses should be in your budget. So even if you come out to zero, hopefully what's in that budget is an occasional drive-through yummy coffee somewhere, or something that you've built into your budget, those things that make life enjoyable. However, if you are in the negative, or you're at zero and you want to have a little more money left over, then you start going through those lists of expenses and figuring out what you can pull out. We'll also talk about where we can help find spending leaks, and what those are, and what the benefit to identifying those spending leaks can be. So let's talk about different things within the actual budget itself. Sorry. So you've got your income here at the top, and that's all the money coming in from all the different sources. But you have then these are the fixed expenses. These are your expenses that are unlikely to fluctuate month to month, right? So your mortgage or rent, your insurance, your vehicle insurance, car payment, loan payments, fixed loan payments, so your car loan, those kinds of things, long-term savings, and emergency savings. What I really want to also make sure that you see here is that savings is in your budget. You have to put this in your budget. If you don't put it in your budget, it is unlikely to happen. And you can put it in your budget even if, and hopefully what you're doing is you get paid on the first, and on the second, money automatically goes into a savings account somewhere, goes into some sort of saving vehicle, but that it happens automatically. The reality is that if you don't put it a part of your budget, you're less likely to make it happen. And that ideally it should be a percentage of your income, and it can be 1%, it can be 0.5%, but start somewhere, and you're putting money into your savings, both long-term, which is retirement, and maybe that's happening automatically through a deduction in your employment, but also emergency savings. So like the place that you would go to if your transmission went out, or if you needed to come up with something for school for the kids, but that emergency savings, that unanticipated expense that comes along. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of an author named Barbara Stanny. She is actually her grandfather was the H and H&R Block. She actually came from a significant amount of wealth, and then lost it all in a relationship, and had to kind of come back from that. Now, granted, she was began as a wealthy white woman and ended as a wealthy white woman, so she had some things going for her. But she wrote a book called Prince Charming Isn't Coming, and it really was her journey as particularly a female coming back from that and what she did that was unique to that. And she identifies these steps, which is number one is save regularly. Number two, I should say, one is save regularly. One is invest wisely, and the other one is save regularly. No, I said save regularly. I'm going to get this all wrong because I'm usually writing this on the board. Save regularly, invest wisely, and give generously. Those are her 3 keys to financial success, right? But she says what's important to know, those are actually in order. That you start saving regularly, get used to the concept of saving regularly. Then once you're saving regularly, then you start investing wisely to your comfort level so that you know what's going on, so you know how that works. And if you do those things, then it will allow you to then give generously. It's after you do those first 2 that you give generously. What we often as women, we often as advocates, what do we tend to do first? We often tend to give generously first, leaving very little to save or invest in ourselves. And her concept is that if you do those things first, you're in a better position to give generously in the long run than if you do it up front and then you have nothing left for yourself. And so it's something to consider, something to really think about and get better about, making sure that you're putting aside even a small amount on a regular basis into your savings. Savings must be treated as part of your budget. You have to put yourself first, even if it's a small amount. Again, consider a percentage of your income. And it can be 1% or 0.5% of your income. Ideally, 5% would be great. And the beauty of saving a percentage is that then hopefully as your income increases over time, then what you're saving, it also increases. If you just do a flat $20 or flat $50, then if you got a raise or a cost of living allowance or a bonus, then what your savings is not going to increase. So you want to always, as your income increases, make sure you're also increasing what you're saving. If you don't have enough money to consider all your expenses, and when it comes to your budgeting, consider working extra hours if possible, create even a home business, start in the gig economy, those micro businesses, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, Instacart shopping, those kinds of things. And if you can, also reduce some of your wants. So consider reducing your eating out and other things like that. We'll talk more about what that might look like. The other part of your budget, though, is those flexible spending, and we'll get into that. So these are the things that vary month to month. Some of them you have choices about and some of you don't. You don't always have choices about utilities, although you can do things the month prior to reduce the amount of the bill. You know, you can make it a little less warm or a little less cold, things like that. You can reduce your spending maybe in your credit cards. You can take advantage of lower prices on gas and things like that. But some of you just don't have control over, but they still will vary month to month. So like shopping for clothes and things like that will vary month to month, depending on what you've got going on, in particular if you have kiddos. Some things that you can think about, though, many utility companies will offer what they call levelized plans. And that is where you will pay this month what the last average 12 months of that utility bill would have been, and that you pay that so that you're not seeing huge fluctuations in those utility bills. So that may be something to talk through and to offer. It's actually something that I do personally so that I don't have really high ones in the summer and really, or even in the winter. I do a levelized plan. So I'm able to take what would normally be an unknown, make it more of a consistent known, which is really helpful. Some things also to keep in mind when it comes to budgeting is to identify that for many of us, emotions and money are closely tied, right? Has anybody, just like, I got to go to Target because it's Tuesday. It was a really hard day. Today is a hard day. So I'm gonna go to Target, or I'm gonna go get on Amazon or whatever. That for many of us that is closely tied. And the same certainly is true for survivors. When controlling an abusive or controlling relationship, many will finally have freedom to spend as they want. And that coming into shelter, I can't imagine as a mom coming into shelter with my kids and feeling less like I'm doing my job as a parent, right? That I would feel like I really screwed it up if I'm coming into shelter with my kids, right? And many of us see that as a positive, right? Those of us who are the helpers are like, you're here, you made a way to go. We're so proud of you. But as a parent, that can't feel good. And so I certainly have worked with survivors that they came into shelter and the next day with the last $10 they had, blew it on their kiddos at the dollar store, right? And bought what, in my opinion, was probably crap. Now as a parent, I get it. I completely get that for a few minutes, I need to feel like I'm providing for my kids. And I need to go spend this last dollar I have on buying them some silly lip gloss that they really want, because for just a minute, they need to feel okay. And so we just need to really be open with folks about that, having those conversations with people, sanctioning that, making that okay, and identifying that I get it, I do it too, I understand, and not making people feel bad. But the other thing we can do is we can really address those emotional spendings up front, not just let them happen. You know, if you're working with a survivor that's going to have access to their own money for the first time, maybe they've never had access to their own check or whatever's coming in, that to identify that, say, hey, I know you're getting your first paycheck that you're in total control over. What's the plan? Who do you need to pay to keep off your back? And what are you going to do to celebrate? And what do you need from me? Do you need me to drive you to go get money orders? What can I do to be a part of this? How can I be helpful? Creating a timeline, reminding yourself of those financial goals can also be a way to curb some of that emotional spending, as well as examining your own feelings and notice when you're tempted to overspend. Are they triggered at certain times? When you're high stress or when you're lonely, or maybe it's late nights when you can't sleep, but identifying when those triggers are happening and just being really honest with yourself and creating diversions when you know those things are going to happen. So dealing with emotional spending, really encourage you to write down those financial goals. Estimate how much time and how much money it will take to reach your financial goals. Then once you've written down those goals, put them in a place where you will see them. So if you are a late night laptop Amazon shopper, put it on your screen, put a Post-it note on your screen. Trip to Fiji or fenced in backyard or whatever that goal is, put it on that Post-it note and put it where you're going to see it. Put it on the dashboard of your car if you keep going to get fancy coffees too many times. Whatever that place where you're having a spending leak, put your reminder where those things are. Or even set electronic reminders on your phone can also be helpful. And examine your feelings. Notice when you're being tempted to overspend, find alternatives. And really one of the best advice I can give you is to just put the purchase off for one day. Just one day. If I still want it tomorrow, then I'll go get it, but I'll put it off for one day. And that gives your emotions time to settle a little bit more and maybe take even the edge off of it. Before you spend, also some things you can do is, did I compare prices? Is this a need? Can I afford it? And will this delay me in reaching my financial goals? Again, if you have to borrow money in order to buy something, then just keep in mind it will take longer for you to reach that goal, which is fine. That's okay, but just that you have some awareness about it, that it will take you longer. Again, remember, borrowing, when I say borrow money, that seems like probably, that you have to go to the bank and fill out paperwork and put on. Anytime you use your credit card, you're actually borrowing money. You're borrowing it from Visa, you're borrowing it from MasterCard or American Express. You are borrowing money from that company to purchase the thing. So remember, if you're like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna have a big old dinner, I'm gonna have a bunch of cocktails, I'll put on my credit card because I've had a tough day, you are borrowing money to have dinner. So it's fine if you pay that credit card off every month when the bill comes fully down to zero. But if every month you're making your minimum, you are paying astronomical amounts of interest rates and fees to borrow money to have nice fancy dinners. Probably not a great investment, right? So try to think of ways to have fun without breaking the bank, treat yourself, give yourself your manicure, enjoy your favorite dessert at home, read a book, spend time with friends, things like that. Other things, we really do encourage everybody, not just survivors, everybody to whatever you're doing and setting for your financial goals, to have those conversations with your kids if they're still in the house. Talk about, things are going to change. We're not going to go out to eat as much, or we're going to do these things to curb expenses because we're working towards this vacation or working towards buying a house. So we're going to change our spending a little bit so that they're involved in some of that decision making. And then things you can do with them: cook and bake together, read stories, go to the library, things like that. So as much as you can include your kids in creating those goals, the more in support they are going to be in the changes that are going to have to be made on a day-to-day basis, right? So start saving, right? easier said than done, but ideally, you should, this is what the financial managers will tell you, that you should have ideally 3 to 6 months of living expenses in an emergency savings account. Has anybody ever, and this is what I'm going to see if you guys are paying attention, have anybody ever met with a financial planner and the financial planner told you that you should have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a savings account, that that's what you should have or be working towards? Anybody ever experienced that? Yep. A few said yes, one said no. Yeah. And when they told you that, is that when you began to disassociate? Is that when you began to realize that this magical, mythical place of retirement that they keep talking about clearly has nothing to do with you? Because the idea of having 3 to 6 months of living expenses just sitting in an account for an emergency seems like the most wackadoo idea ever. Yeah. So I think that for many of us, and I know when I first met with the planner, they told me that, and I thought, boy, good thing they're paying for lunch, because they have no idea how I live my life and that I am paycheck to paycheck, right? And I think because what they set as sort of the primary first step seems so unattainable, then many of us then just stop paying attention to the rest of it and think that things like retirement then must have nothing to do with their life, right? So I would encourage you to really start with a realistic savings goal. 1 month's housing, 1 month's rent. Start there, make that your first goal. And if it takes 12 months to get there or 2 years to get there, that's fine. It is the act of consistently saving is what you want to get to, and make that goal obtainable, that you know that you're working towards 1 month's rent or 1 month's mortgage. Then you know if the worst thing happens, you got 1 month's rent covered, right? There's some security to that. And that's okay to start with something what I call biteable, that seems attainable to you. Once you've met that goal, then you can add to it, but start now and be consistent. It is too easy to do that now. You know, most of us probably are getting electronic deposits in our accounts, right? That if you're getting electronic deposit, you're probably banking electronically. If you get paid on the 1st and the 15th or every other Friday or whatever that is, the day after you get paid, then have money automatically go into a savings account. It is too easy to set up. You can set it up so that it happens automatically. You don't even have to think about it. But it can be small. It can be $10 a paycheck, right? So you're better off to save $10 every month than $25 when you have it. Because if you wait till you have it, then it's not going to happen, right? So this is really, we waited till now to tell you, this is actually an intervention for every single one. I'm just kidding. No, but have you ever put on a jacket or jeans that you haven't worn in a while and put your hand in a pocket and found a $20 bill? Anybody ever done that? Right? Like best day ever, right? And when you find that $20 bills, are you like, retirement, gonna put it in my retirement account? No, you're like, lunch. Yes, happy hour. We're going to hit this, right? If you wait till you have money left at the end, you will find some place to reward yourself for having money at the end. And it won't go to savings. So make savings automatic. You are far better off to save regularly, smaller amount than, kind of fool yourself that you're going to wait. Here's an example of a $120 annually. And for most of us, that's, for any of us, that would be $10 a month, $5 a paycheck. There is not a one of us, I promise you, there's not a one of us in this room that can identify when they have thrown away $5. Whether it was just something silly or frivolous. I mean, they liked whatever they did with the $5, but could they have avoided the $5 and still been a happy person? Probably. So for most of us, this is pretty doable. This is $10 a month, $5 a paycheck for most of us, small interest savings account, and interest rates are going up. So this is feasible that in 5 years time, you would have $631, 31 of that's interest rate. Just set aside, how many times would having access to $631 have been helpful in a tight spot? How often would having access to $631 kept us from having to tap into a credit card and paid interest? So And again, that's $5 a paycheck. Most of us could probably do $10 or even $20 a paycheck realistically, right? So if you add that, so you're talking 4 times that amount potentially. So these are the different types of savings accounts to think about. So typically these accounts will earn, traditional savings account will earn the least interest of all the options. However, they're incredibly safe and they are a really good place to start. So whatever your bank offers, a savings account, start with that. Money market accounts, these are typically pay about 0.5% higher than traditional savings account. They may require a minimum balance to even open and to be kept. And there's also limits on transactions. You can only have 6 transactions, deposits or withdrawals every month in a money market account. Be careful, because what many, particularly online banks, will call a savings account is actually a money market account. If anybody's ever gotten a notice from their bank that says, hey, you've had too many transactions this month, it's because actually it's a money market account, which allows them to pay slightly higher interest, but there are more limits on how many times you can move money around. So something to keep in mind. Money market accounts are also a good place to put money pre-investment. So maybe you're going to get a couple of $100 saved up in your money market account and then invest it, and maybe buy some stocks on your own or do something like that. But many investment accounts will have money market accounts tied to it. And then there's even certificates of deposits. And these will be interesting to watch in the coming year, really. Certificates of deposits are offered through individual banks. They can run in terms anywhere to 3 months to 6 months. But there are payments for early withdrawal, but you know going in how much that will be, how much that will have gained over time. You'll know that the day you open the account, that when it matures in 5 years at this percentage is locked in, and that's how much it'll be worth the end. Certificates of deposit can be really great. Like, let's say you're like, I know I'm planning a trip to France in 2 years, and I just got my tax return, or I got this chunk of money, I'm going to put it away in this 2-year CD, and I know exactly how much it's going to be in 2 years when it matures. That can be a really good idea. Also, certificates of deposits are interesting because you can shop those. Different banks will offer different specials at different times, because banks are required to have a certain amount of cash on hand to balance the money they've lent. And so if they've made a significant lending that period of that month, they may offer CD specials to try to get cash infusion in their bank to balance some of that out. So watch your local banks. It's also a really cool way to support even small local banks is to purchase their certificates of deposit. They are guaranteed, they are safe, they are insured, they're FDIC insured, so they are super safe. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the feds are saying interest rates are going up. This is a known now. We know over the next year, interest rates are going to start rising. So they're going to rise all the places, which means they're going to go up on credit card balances, but they're also going to go up on savings and certificates of deposits. So this is a really good time to pay down debt. And then once you get your debt paid down, then you can start then putting money into savings. Question here is, do CDs exist for credit? Yeah, credit unions can offer CDs. Absolutely. So check your local credit unions and see what they're offering. You can also go to, and I'm going to put this here in the chat here, bankrate.com. Did I type right? Bankrate.com is actually a really great place to check what local banks are offering for CDs, what they're offering for interest rates on loans, savings accounts, and things like that. But check that out, or go to your local bank's websites, and they will also let you know what specials they're running. So something to think about. So assets and liabilities, and we're just going to talk a little bit about, just to give you some terminology. I think that these are bantered around, and just so you make sure you understand what some of these financial terms are. So assets, these are things this is property owned by a person. So these are the things that you own. So cars, collections, real estate, insurance, cash, bank accounts, investments. These are what you own versus a liability. A liability is what you owe. So money owed on loans, on credit cards, your payment plans, that is your liability. With the part that's outstanding in your mortgage, that's your liability. That is what own versus owed means. So it is important that when you're looking at your finances, that you take stock of what your assets and liabilities, and particularly when you're working with survivors, and we're going to flip back now, you thinking, put your advocate hat on, that when working with survivors, to help them think through what are their different assets and liabilities, and making sure that those things are equitably split. So do they have property? Do they have loans and bank accounts in each other's names, and both names? Are there pensions, retirements that they should be aware of? Items of high value, such as tools or collections, things like that. And that many, and we're going to talk more about this in the next slide, but mediation may also be court-ordered for some couples to determine ownership of these assets and liabilities. But it's important to understand that mediation for most of the folks that we work with is probably not a great idea. Sorting through financial relationship with an abusive partner can often be dangerous as it is. And then when required to go through mediation through a court is probably not a good idea. Mediation only works when both parties have equal power, and that most of the folks that we work with, that is certainly not the case. It's important that we not let judges and courts push survivors into mediation. So you may be asked to use a mediator to resolve these financial obligations, even when there's custody involved. But again, as I said, mediation requires that both partners work together and reach a settlement that is mutually agreeable. And this is often not the case for the folks that we work with. So just again, briefly, we're going to talk about what different banking options may be available. That, traditional banks, these are the brick and mortar places that are down the corner that you can drive through. These are traditional financial institutions that accept deposits, channel money, all that good stuff, lend money. And then there's credit unions. And I think it was Jessica that asked about credit. Credit unions are great. Credit unions are community-based financial cooperatives, essentially, that if you have an account at a credit union, you're actually a member. You're actually a voting member. You can actually make decisions. You can be part of making decisions, I should say. That's something to be thinking about. So sometimes you have to be employed a certain place or have a connection to something, sort of there's military credit unions. You have to be a member of that branch, or that maybe hospital credit unions. But then there's also just plain old community credit unions that anybody can be a member of. And they are offering very competitive services and opportunities. And then there's check cashing stores. So these are businesses that cash checks for a fee. Generally, they're about 4% of the amount of the check. So this is where somebody would go if they didn't have a traditional bank, but they had a check. They would actually pay somebody to cash that check for them. And it can be pretty expensive. And then there's also then payday lenders and car title loans. These provide small cash advance and short-term loans, typically with very high interest rates. I don't know what the rules there are in New Mexico. It's a state by state thing, but some are as high as 400% APR. These are loans that many folks are never going to get out from under. So be aware that they're very predatory in nature. They are created to make it difficult to ever pay off. And so we want to really help people think differently about accessing those too quickly if they can at all avoid it. There's a question here, as Dawn said, is the slideshow available? Yeah, you don't worry about taking notes. The slides are all available at the link that you were given where the participant guide is. If you back up out of that, then there's also the advocate trainer PowerPoints are all available. I'll show you here at the end. I'll show you here. I'll take you through it. I promise. So did you know that unbanked customers are 6 times more likely to use costly check cashing services? So this is a good reminder that it's a good time to get survivors involved with banking, if at all possible. I know there's lots of good reasons why people are not banked. That maybe they've had a bad experience, they don't trust banks, they may be lacking certain documentation, they may be worried about their immigration status, but you can be banked using an ITIN number. That is possible. There's lots of Bank of America. I know lots of the bigger banks are doing some really creative stuff for folks that are undocumented. They will be required to show things like name, date of birth, and residency, but they can have a little bit of play on what they use for an identification number. And then there are banking tips. So just some things to keep in mind is keep your PIN private, be aware of all the fees associated with banks. And then online banking may offer some additional conveniences and savings if somebody is comfortable with that. So, phew, we made it to the end of module 2. I am going to show you this cool thing. Here's a printed out version of it, but I'm going to show you this cool electronic version that we got fancy schmancy here. I want to talk about, make sure what you can see here. 1 second. A new share. I'm going to share. I'm going to put my glasses on for this. Here we go. Okay, this is available. I'm going to send you links for all of this, but this is available on our Learn Dash, and I'll send you links. I'll make sure that Teresa has it also. But this is what we call a spending leak. So if anybody is comfortable, oops, wait, that's the budget one. I brought up the wrong one. Hang on 1 second. Let me get a different one here. Oh, but I'll show you this one while we've got it. So this is a cool place you can go to help survivors think through their budget so they can put their amounts in here. So, oops. $1,000, let's put in child support, 150. They got a little Etsy gig going on here. So there's their income, and then they can put in all their expenses. So they put in their rent. So this is an electronic one that they can use. They can put all their information in here. That's too much. And then it totals it up here at the bottom. So it gives them total, how much they have left, or if they've overspent. It does an electronic budget. It refreshes every time. It's not saved somewhere, but it helps them think through. If you're sitting down with a survivor kind of going through this, they can access this. And then I will also share with you this link. Sorry. Interactive spending link. Pull that up. I was all ready to go and I was not quite. Okay, so this is the interactive spending link. If somebody would be brave enough in our talking today, would you be willing to share with me after we're talking today, you're like, you know what? I do go to lunch every day. I do go to lunch 5 days a week. I go through drive-through every night, or I can't live without my Starbucks. And there's a place I know I'm spending that I could probably think differently about that. Would anybody be willing to share that? If you would, either unmute yourself or put in what your your little vice is and the amount you spend. Would you put that in the chat? I eat out a lot. Okay, Jessica, are we talking like every lunch, every dinner? How many times a week do you think you eat out? How many times in a 7-day period do you think you probably eat out? Most lunches and breakfasts and some dinners. So is it fair to say, like when you say most, is it 5 days a week or 7 days a week? Family of 5 for dinner. Whoosh. Okay. 5 days a week. Okay. So I'm gonna let's just yeah, family outings on weekends. Yep. Yep. Although those are fun. I'm not sure you should cut back on some of those, but maybe reduce some of the expenses. So Jessica, I'm gonna use you as my example. Okay. I'm gonna say that every day you're probably gonna eat out lunch for work. Okay. So we're gonna go over here and I'm gonna put in my cost each time. So let's say on average, $7 every time you go through lunch drive-through. Okay. So you are doing this 5 days a week. Okay. So that is on average weekly, you're spending $35 a week on your drive-through lunch. Monthly, it's about $140. Annually, it's this, $1,820. Is that surprising? Just on a $7 lunch, 5 days a week is $1,820. Can you think of something else you'd rather? Yes. Can you think of something else you'd rather do with $1,820? Lots, right? So this is going to be a place to help you identify what some of those leaks are. It's a lot, right? So I'm also going to share with you this Excel spreadsheet. So one thing I want you to think about is, okay, so you still have to eat out, right? You can't not eat lunch. That's not what I'm suggesting, but that you maybe only eat out for lunch twice a week, Mondays and Fridays, the worst and the best days ever, right? That you eat out. Now you're just going to do it 2 days a week. You're going to $7 and it's $2 2 times a week. And you're going to now only spend $728, right? So, but the other days you still have to eat. So I want you to enjoy that still. So maybe you go and get some really good lunch meat, or you go and take leftovers, but there's still an expense with that. So, I often tell people, if they're like, I love Starbucks, great. Starbucks twice a week, whatever you come up with. The other days, have really delicious coffee at home. So know that you're still going to spend, but you're going to spend less. You can't just cut it out completely. So once you've identified what you're going to do instead and how much you're going to save, because now you've saved yourself almost $1,000 by just cutting that out, particularly if you can take leftovers instead. Now I want you to find something new to do with that $1,000. So divide that $1,000 over 24 pay periods or whatever it is. And then now automatically, whatever that amount from, I'm going to calculate it right now. Look at me. We're not going to mess around with this, Jessica. We're going to figure it out. You're now saving $1,000. I'm going to assume you're paid twice a month. You now have $41 that after every pay period, $41 goes into savings because now you're not spending it in drive-through. So now you have to divert the money, put it somewhere else, and now you have to commit to changing the behavior, which also means talking to your coworkers, talking to your kids, tell them, hey, look, I want to save $1,000 this month, this year, and I'm going to do it by only eating out 2 days a week. And so don't ask me on Tuesdays because I can't be tempted. I'm weak. I love a drive-through. So just make a plan, talk to people about it, divert that money, make it go into savings, make it go live somewhere else, and see that growth, and then change your patterns and behaviors. So I encourage you to use this to take a look at where you're spending your money, where those dollars are out. There's also a form. Let me see if I can find that too, real quick. Oh, I attached it. I'll make sure it's available. I'll send it an actual Excel spreadsheet where you can also then calculate how much you save and what you are spending. So I'll make sure that Teresa has that before the end of today and that you have it tomorrow. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. Oh, the other place we're going to go is we're going to show you where to find all this cool stuff. So you just put in AllState Foundation in your search. And we're going to go here and we're going to say not now. So are you all seeing my web page here? I'll make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Yep. Okay, great. So I just Googled AllState Foundation, or you can go to allstatefoundation.org. You go here, you say, they say, what do we do? Oh, they do domestic violence work. So we click on domestic violence work. You scroll down and you want to see the curriculum. There it is. And here is it. You can go downloadable. This PDF here is in Spanish, English, French, Vietnamese. It's all here. And you can print that off. Or you can go to the advocates information, and here are all of the PowerPoints in there. They all live right there. So you can see that anytime you want. You can access them anytime you want. They also have this really cool online version that are like mini modules that you can also share with survivors, and they can go through at their own pace. That's available here. I'll click on that. And they have some really great videos in here, but it talks about what is financial safety planning, how to protect your personal safety, things to think about when separation and divorce, and they have quizzes at the end so people can walk through and do this on their own as well. It's the exact same material that we've talked about that's in the actual printed. It's just broken into mini modules, and it's available here. I have this pull up here, and it gets stories, and it's self-guided. So that is available for you.